I don't want to be towed. I don't know why they're hooking me up. Push it from the back and get me rolling. They don't give a They're hooking it up. They're going to rip the whole back of this dog. Wow. Holy who is that? Brief again. Damn. How the did that just happen? Holy cow, baby! Let's go!
And welcome into another episode of Historic Hot Laps. Post Daytona, what a mess that is. We'll just dive right into it and get going. As always, we'll have history news, everything else following that. Hope everyone enjoyed the Daytona Speed Week, the weekend, all that. Let's dive right into it. So, what a shit show. I mean, we're talking a lot of expensive tore up race cars, a lot of stuff the purists probably aren't super happy about. Does it make for good entertainment? Absolutely. But that being said, it's not worth it. It's just not. The chaos of the whole thing, all the tore up race cars, pissed off drivers, guys who are running in the front all day don't get the win because of a giant wreck or whatever the case may be. Just a fucking cluster. But let's talk about it. So let's start off with Truck Series. That was the first race we saw. Had a lot of weather going on there in Daytona. Truck Series practices and really everything I think kind of got shuffled around a little bit practice wise. But Truck Series, that race was pretty decent. He had several cautions. It wasn't as record setting as the previous year with 12 or whatever it was, but there were a few things that happened off of turn 4. Typical spot for incidents, it seemed like, going into this. Stage 1, you had the Ford of Ben Rhodes get that one. Matt Crafton took stage 2 in his Ford. Really, again, the Fords all across all series just run strong at super speedways, but the race win gets a little controversial. You had Parker Kligerman get the win. He's driving that Chevrolet part-time, kind of one-off deals here and there. He gets the win, waves the flag, it's looking great. Half the field wrecks behind him. Post-race inspection comes along though, and his ride height in the rear was off, too low in the rear of the car, disqualifying him, making Corey Heim the official winner of that truck race. So kind of a heartbreak situation for Parker. Yeah, just typical stuff. I mean, ride height, whatever it may be, I don't know. The rule book's getting pretty crazy. He had that race won, he drove great. He didn't have an advantage over everybody else, I mean, in my eyes, but I'm not the technical guy for it, so who knows at the end of it, you know? So from there, let's move over to the ARCA race. ARCA was something else as well. The ARCA race, I don't even know where to start. You want to talk about a bunch of tore up race cars, let's talk about ARCA, which is typical on any given weekend, but it's worse at Daytona. We had a couple IndyCar crossovers with Catherine Legg and Helio Castroneves running this one, but the team's checkbooks really got up on this one. Wrecked cars, it was insane. Way too much to cover, but let's just talk about the win. Race win goes to Brendan Butterbean Queen, the same guy who won the Cars Tour Championship last year. This is his ARCA debut. He gets the win, makes everybody proud. We know he's good in late models, and he just transitioned straight over to super speedway racing. He's got a super sick mullet, just everything's going right for him. So waves the flag, very patriotic finish, just super cool. So notable though that Helio Castroneves was involved in nearly every single wreck incident. So I want to say wreck, but every single incident on the track, one way or another, most of which was not his fault. He still managed to end up in 5th place. A lot of it, I mean, half the field was attrition, but still kept it up front, super banged up race car, and he kept wheeling it. So that was kind of cool to see. And then, man, at the end, doing a cool down lap, and he just gets plowed again. Like, guys just not paying attention around him. He was doing the right thing, but he got wrecked again after the finish, which is just kind of a double shot, right? Like, that's just crazy. And that wraps up the ARCA race. Let's move over to Xfinity. Looking at the Xfinity race, Austin Hill, we knew would probably dominate Daytona, and he was looking really good. He takes stage 1 and stage 2. Nick Sanchez brought out a yellow into stage 2, but Austin Hill was going to get that one way or another anyway. Austin Hill is going to sweep it, take it home, another victory at Daytona, but it would have been 4 in a row for him too as well, I believe. But he did have a rear end issue. He was losing grease out of the rear end. They kept showing it on the broadcast, and he had to retire at the beginning of stage 3. That opened up the door for the other RCR car, Jesse Love. making it his second win on a super speedway when he got the race win there at Daytona. So it's crazy how well some of these setups are. RCR and the Xfinity Series just killing it, doing a great job. They had a lot of speed in the Cup Series as well, but Daytona's kind of their focus. But congrats to Jesse Love. He's obviously going to make some things happen this year. This is his second super speedway win. He had a few other handful of mile-and-a-half wins, I believe, last year. Overall, really cool to see. And with that brings us to the Cup Series race. So going into it, there's about 45 entries trying to make it into the Great American Race. More than we've seen in some time. Great sign for the growth of teams in motorsports. You had some qualifications, which we saw Chase Briscoe get the pole, and that led us into the duels. And Duel 1 win goes to Bubba Wallace, which was super cool to see. Good momentum for that team coming out of the off season. And then Duel 2, kind of no surprise how that one ended up, even though it was a kind of a photo finish deal. But it goes to Austin Cindric. It did look like Eric Jones got the win. He drove up to the finish line and was waiting for the call. And NASCAR kind of boned him and said that he wasn't leading when the caution came out, even though he did have the advantage pretty much the whole time. Austin Cindric was surprised by that call as well. So good sportsmanship there. He said, man, I feel bad for him. He was right there. It probably was his and everything else. So moving on from there, that takes us to the race. And like we talked about, this was a up weekend of racing. I can't believe the amount of attrition and cars that got destroyed and the amount of money left on the track. Just insane. We've talked about it before. The Fords, and especially the Penske Fords in the Cup Series on super speedways, they're kind of unstoppable. Stage 1 went to Joey Logano. He, without question, had the fastest car on track all day, and he kind of punted himself into a hole, trying to go into a passing situation in the middle where there was not enough room for him and wrecking a couple guys out. But that was in Stage 3. He did have the fastest car on track up until that point. Stage 2 went to Ryan Blaney. Again, Penske Ford Super Speedways, no surprise there. And the race win actually went to William Byron. He was running somewhere around 9th, and this is kind of the problem with this whole setup, right? Like, guys are drafting, tight packs, stuff's gonna happen, but when you run mid-pack all day long and you win something as prestigious as the Daytona 500, and this isn't a shot against William Byron by any means, he's a great driver, driving for Hendrick, one of the strongest teams, but when the lead cars all get taken out and you just luckily get through it, and then you get the race win, like, yeah, I mean, you can believe in fate and things like that, but just kind of crazy, right? So he does get the win though, celebrates. 8 cars in front of him wrecked out, and he was able to sneak by the top, which was good. That was a good move on him and his spotter on the driving and everything else, but just wild overall. So that's how that finished out. We did have some post-race penalties, which we should talk about. It doesn't really affect the finish too much, but it does affect the season for a few guys. So the post-race penalties that we're already seeing the fallout of. This is what was posted on NASCAR.com. The number 19 Joe Gibbs Racing Team was dealt a level 2 penalty after last week's Daytona 500. Following further inspection at NASCAR R&D Center in Concord, North Carolina, NASCAR found modifications to the spoiler of the number 19 Toyota driven by Chase Briscoe. Also your pole winner there, which is kind of a shot, and that's why he got the R&D treatment as far from NASCAR. According to the NASCAR rulebook, level 2 penalty includes modifications to the next-gen single-source vendor supply parts and or assemblies. JGR was found to be in violation of section 14.1 of the rulebook, which pertains to overall assembled vehicle rules, and 14.5.8, which deals with the spoiler. Specifically, the spoiler base was found to be modified in the number 19 car. The spoiler base is a single-source part and cannot be modified. Briscoe was docked 100 driver points and 10 playoff points, which is not how you want to start your season, but JGR was fined $100,000 and deducted 100 owner points as well as 10 playoff points. Crew Chief James Small was suspended for 4 races. That's the one that's going to be a little rough. Other penalties were also handed out after Daytona for the number 34 Front Row Motorsports and the number 51 Rickwire Racing entry for safety violation ballast found outside the ballast containers. Driver Todd Gillen and Cody Ware were both docked 10 points for that, and their respective teams were dropped 10 owner points. So some fallout post Daytona there, but that covers the weekend of racing in Daytona. So let's take it back even further. It's been a couple weeks since we talked, but we did have the Dirt Car National season opener with the World of Outlaws at Volusia Speedway. So let's talk about that real quick. Night one, Christopher Bell jumped back into this one. Had some mechanical issues that took him out mid-feature, so he did not get to finish the race on night one. David Gravel looked to be on the charge with Kyle Larson on his heels, both putting pressure on buddy Foyt. Foyt pushed a little too hard on the cushion, ended up on his lid and his wing, ultimately ending his race. Finished out that Carson Macedo took the win, and David Gravel in second and Larson in third. So a great opening night. A lot of action for that Dirt Car Nationals. That takes us to night two. For those who don't know, this is a 4-night event, with night 4 being, Saturday night finisher. Night 2, Bell came out and he got his redemption for his mechanical failures and returned to victory circle after a hard battle with Larson. Being a photo finish, Larson almost had him. He was running really strong, but he just about got him. It was pretty cool to see that. If you haven't seen it, go back, check out Flow Racing's coverage on it. It's pretty awesome. Night 3. So up to this point, we know Young Money's on the charge. Performance-wise, we were seeing Kyle Larson couldn't be held back too much. Larson ends up being the feature winner on night 3, getting the mini gator. Those who haven't seen the Volusia trophies are super cool. They're this little alligator, and then night 4 is the big gator. Kyle Larson winning night 3. So going into night 4, qualifiers, everybody's got good positions. Saturday night, the big gator trophy on the line. And we know already how this is going to go, right? Everybody can predict it. Does what he does best under pressure in sprint cars, Mr. Young Money. Kyle Larson ends up with the victory again. This is his first big gator, I believe, though, at Volusia. So let's just take a second here. We'll clip out some of the post-race interviews over those 4 nights and check it out.
It's really, really cool, man. It's been a humbling few weeks for me. Just the experience of breaking my leg and not feeling like if I was going to be, not knowing really if I was going to be ready to come here or not and be, 100%. And to come here night 1 and win is, man, I feel like super emotional. It was really cool. Like I said, just a long journey. I feel like to get back here, getting around on crutches was tough and just plays with your head a little bit. So JGR 41 felt great tonight. The all-ball, Tarleton and sub-complete parts and equipment car was on rails all night. We were actually, engine was missing a little bit in qualifying and still were able to come back and lay down a really good lap. So just executed from there. Philip Dietz, Adam Zimmerman, Ryan McQuinn worked really hard and gave me a great race car. So
yeah, absolutely it is. It's a place that I feel like I've raced well, just always start so far back. So I haven't felt like that Gator's been close enough. So we've been getting the night start off well, and my car feels really good throughout the night. So I felt really good there again. Just it got kind of like a little easy to run the top, so the lappers were just as fast as I was, and I felt like Bell would be closing on me. But I was able to make a couple good moves, and then I think the cautions probably came out at the right time for me and was able to just have clean air to the end there. So yeah, it means a lot. This has just been a track that's historically and statistically been probably our weakest. So it's been great to come here and have speed every time we hit the track, and to cap off the week with a big gator is something that I've honestly dreamt about for a long time, just because of how bad we've been here. So really great to get the win there. Obviously it took rubber, and it's probably not as exciting for the fans, but behind the wheel it just turns into a lot of strategy and how you push your car, how you push your tires. You were catching lappers, and it's like, man, do I be patient and stay behind them? And before that last caution, McCarl was really making the middle work. So I was just nervous of that with Logan behind me if I slow my pace down too much. So then I was trying to open my corner up and just made a couple mistakes there late, but was able to just shut the door and just, commit to the bottom. And if he was to drive around me, he was to drive around me. But just really cool to get a win here at Volusia again. And like I said, cap it off with a big gator.
All right. So let's talk some news. We've got a little bit of news to talk about. Nothing too crazy this week, but this will be quick. So Formula One news. Netflix has kind of stepped into the fight to try and get the broadcasting rights to Formula One, since F1 will be looking to renew and find new broadcasting partners after this season. Netflix being already with the Drive to Survive and pushing hard on that. They're kind of getting into the live sports things. I believe they've got some World Wrestling Entertainment stuff on there. They had the boxing stuff with Mike Tyson and all that. They're really trying to push into the sports world of things. So if Netflix does get the rights to F1, that'll be pretty interesting. So yeah, we'll just see how that plays out. Moving over to IndyCar, we finally know who's going to fill the last seat in IndyCar, that being Dale Coyne Racing's number 18 car. And as predicted, Rinus VeeKay, who is arguably the most valuable free agent, will run full-time with Dale this season. That locks up all the cars just 2 weeks before the season opener in St. Pete. So if you guys have your predictions, I mean, get after it. But seeing Rinus in the Dale Coyne car again will be pretty awesome to see. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, they're still a lower budget team, but you might be able to make some things happen for them. So especially at Indy. Sadly, after 2 seasons, the 100 Days to Indy docuseries that was put on by the CW network is over. I'm sure a lot of this has to do with the Fox deal and IndyCar realigning its new broadcast partners, but that one has been shut down and killed for the time being. I doubt we'll see anything from that unless we see other documentaries somewhere else, but that's about all there was on that, just that it was concluded and they weren't going to repeat the series. And this one's kind of a bigger shock to the sport. Team Penske announced that Tim Cedric has decided to step back from overall day-to-day leader of the racing program. He's getting older. I mean, it might just be more of a retirement situation. He's a pretty busy guy. You know, his son's running really well on NASCAR, everything else. But overall, the leadership won't change a whole lot. It will change a little bit on a day-to-day basis. Tim had this to say in an official statement he put out on Team Penske's website. It says, "I have lived my dream job for the past 25 years as the overall leader of Penske Racing Organization. I've had the opportunity to work with some of the best people in the business while achieving many milestones together." So just, you know, he's still going to be involved. He still manages a lot of stuff for them. He's just not going to be in the day-to-day leader of the whole program. So we'll see what his involvement is in IndyCar moving forward. Another big shakeup. This one would be more involved in Penske Entertainment, but IndyCar organization has announced that Doug Bowles has been named president of the series, which that was previously Jay Fry's position, and there hasn't been much said on his end, but Doug, who already held the role of the track president over at IMS, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, he's now going to play double duty for the time being the series president and the track president. So kind of interesting. We'll see how that goes. I really like Doug Bowles. I think that's a good move. I didn't have any problem with Jay Fry either, though, so it's kind of interesting, you know, how these things align. Looking at JHR, Juncos Hollinger Racing, they announced they're going to put the pause to their Indy NXT effort, the feeder series for the IndyCar series, which they've done pretty well in over the years. This is probably due to funding more than anything. They have done this in the past. I believe it was 2022, and then they came back in 2023 or something like that. So maybe they'll be back next year, maybe not. Only time will tell. And let's see, another one for Fox and IndyCar. IndyCar broadcasting with Fox is getting pretty exciting already. We saw the ad placements and everything else. And now they've announced we can see Kevin Harvick running around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway to help during the broadcast and do some of the stuff that we saw like Dale Jr. doing previous on NBC. So that'll be cool to see Harvick running around IMS during the month of May, and you know, his take on the whole thing out there. So it'll be pretty interesting to see. That brings us to NASCAR. A couple things here. Hall of Fame induction was last week. We saw 3 legends. One we've discussed in the podcast already this last season, but the 3 newest members of the NASCAR Hall of Fame are Ralph Moody, who we've covered in the past with Holman and Moody, Ricky Rudd, and Mr. Carl Edwards. So congrats to all of them. Pretty cool Hall of Fame ceremony. If you guys are into watching that kind of stuff, some good speeches. They're kind of long-winded, but if you're a true fan of the sport, it might be something you're interested in. And let's talk about some other stuff in NASCAR. There's a new system in place for the fastest lap driver in each race. They will receive a bonus point going towards their overall season points total for the championship. So every weekend, whoever has the fastest lap time will get that bonus point, which is a good opportunity. You know, we saw it came down to one single point this last year for the championship, with Kyle Larson being shy 1 point. So, I mean, 1 or 2 points and could make a big difference. The last thing we have for NASCAR this week is Trackhouse Racing has announced it's losing its partner and co-owner in Pitbull, the musician, partner in Trackhouse effort, after they bought the team, and he's kind of been a silent partner in this whole deal. He's no longer going to be involved in the team or the racing efforts, which is kind of interesting. There's been a lot of info on this as far as him leaving, but not really why he's He's been a silent partner for a while. I don't anticipate a whole lot of changes there since he's not really operating in the day-to-day as is. But yeah, that's where we're at with that. And that wraps up the short little bit of news we had this week. All right, let's talk a little history on this one. Got a few things to cover. I do like the history topic we've got going this week. This week we're going to talk about AJ Foyt when he ran the Coyote chassis program. I'd like to credit oldracingcars.com for some of this info, and then there's a few other sources out there as well, but the majority of it came from that website. They've got great history on a lot of this stuff. So Coyote was a brand of racing chassis designed and built for the use of AJ Foyt's racing team in the USAC Championship car racing series, including the Indianapolis 500. We've talked a lot about how that was a sanctioning body in the past with USAC, and they were used from 1966 to 1983. So a long run of the Coyote or Coyote, depending on what part of the country you're from, chassis. So Foyt made himself 141 starts in these cars, in these chassis, winning 25 times during that. George Snyder had the second most starts in a Coyote chassis with 24. Jim McElrath had the only other win in a Coyote chassis. Did not get a year on that, but there are some success with these chassis. Foyt drove a Coyote chassis to victory in the Indy 500 in 1967 and 1977, which is pretty cool, 10 years apart. With Foyt's permission, fellow Indy 500 champion Eddie Cheever began using the Coyote name for his Daytona prototype chassis over at Cheever Racing. They were based on the Fab Car chassis design that he had purchased the rights to in 2007, but also wanted to label him as the Coyote. Even today, Foyt still runs his team using the Coyote logo on a lot of his race cars. Just kind of a nostalgia thing. It's super cool. In 1972, Coyote designed what was, in their own words, as a follow the leader type car. Foyt's chassis designer Bob Riley liked the idea to reduce the frontal area of the 1973 car as much as possible, and hit on the idea of lowering the front suspension wishbone to the center of the wheel hub, allowing the whole tub of the car to be several inches lower. This was the Coyote 4 chassis. It was just right inside the spec of a maximum width of 80 inches, 15 feet long, 104-inch wheelbase, and 32 inches high. It was 150 pounds heavier than the previous year's car. The nose was full width, following the sports car nose fashion of that time, which they really started getting crazy with the front nose pieces. Radiators sitting up very high behind the back of the side pods for cooling of the car. Had fixed plastic skirts, which reduced the drag on the side of the car and under the car. So kind of a aero package type deal. Low pressure aero, and helping out on the downforce of that whole thing. So there's a little drama with that. Foyt credited his father Tony with the design rather than Riley, which then caused a split because it was Riley's design. He left the team and decided to move on, and he joined the Hopkins Racing over with Lindsey Hopkins for the 1974 season. So little drama there, but the whole point of this is how the engineering and ingenuity of these guys trying to figure out these cars and chassis. Just the days before a spec chassis were so exciting for everything. Like, I feel like I missed out on a lot of cool stuff back then, but I wasn't around, so it is what it is. But the history's still there. It's still awesome. And then going in through the 73 season, Foyt had a new livery. He lost a lot of sponsorships that year. He had a long-term sponsor in Sheridan Thompson, but he did end up getting with Jim Gilmore, the Gilmore brothers store fortune, and they kind of blended their logos and designs for the Gilmore Coyote chassis is what it was called, and it was super successful right out of the gate, dumping that money back into the program. Foyt won his second race with that car at Trenton Speedway in 1973. They built a second identical car for the 73 season as well, which was built in time for the Indy 500. This is what really kind of sparked the having Speedway specific cars, and then Foyt ended up running that in the 500. Did not win the 500 that year, but did end up winning again in Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Mile, June of that year in that second Speedway car. Then it was kind of obvious that the 73 Eagles and the McLaren M16Cs were faster than the Coyotes. Those were his only two wins that season based on that. There was some changes to, he's running a little heavier car and everything else. The pair of the 73 Coyotes were rebuilt into 2 new cars and redesigned for 1974. So they kept trying to reinvent the wheel, if you will, over there. So, and then Foyt kept reusing these chassis over and over. So over the next 5 seasons, he used the 2 cars that he built in 1973, 2 cars in 1974, and a Indy 500 only ride in 1975. And then they stuck with that until 1978, built a similar car again. So they had 84 total race starts with the Coyote chassis during that time, 71 of those being with Foyt behind the wheel, and 19 races won. So not a bad stat when it comes to what the Coyote chassis was doing. And then they kind of passed on, like I said, they just kept rebuilding. So 1974 was 1973 cars, basically just a little bit of redesign, moving the radiators a little bit, changing the nose cone, oil cooler changes, stuff like that. And then, just a lot of repeat, change, tweak this, do that, all kinds of stuff. But the 75 car was the real success factor. On 1977, during that Indy 500 win, Foyt was running that 1975 car design that he had stamped approval on, and then he ended up donating that car to the Speedway Museum, and that he had only 1 Coyote chassis car left from 1974, and that was it, the end of that era. They did come back and built a new car in 78, which was built from pieces of a 1974 leftover. A lot of reused stuff. Is pretty crazy, but nobody really knows what happened to most of these cars. Gilmore still owns and has one of the 1974 cars in the Gilmore Museum, but other than that, you've got the 175 car at the Speedway Museum, and everything else has been torn down or destroyed and just lost in history. So Foyt did try another design in 1978 to try to win the Indy 500 again. He did not have much success there, but he did win at Texas with that car. So it showed that it was a good super speedway car. The biggest thing is, like, the chassis were what they were, but the Foyt Ford engines back then weren't quite as strong as the Parnelli engines. They were kind of unproven, even though the chassis might have been better. If you can imagine what combining a Parnelli engine with the Foyt chassis would have done, it probably would have been unstoppable. Foyt actually took the 1978 Coyote design over to the UK to run a couple of races at Silverstone, and did really well with that. He won again in Texas in 1979, and that was the last time that he raced one of those Coyote designs. So pretty crazy, a lot of history on the Coyote program and everything with it. Yeah, just crazy what they went through back in the day to try to keep these cars, new and innovative, but reuse parts and low money and everything else. But Foyt's innovative, we know that. A lot of success in that program, so glad to see. But that pretty much wraps it up for us this week. Another shorter episode. I don't know, tell us, we get some feedback if you guys like these shorter episodes, if you want them longer, who knows. But either way, we're glad we're here. Yeah, appreciate you guys listening. Please like, subscribe, share, follow us on all the socials. Our YouTube channel is great. Comment, send us an email, historichotlapse@gmail.com, any of that good stuff. And we'll take it from there. We appreciate it, and thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget to follow us at Historic Hot Laps on X and all your other social platforms for the latest updates and sneak peeks into upcoming episodes. You can reach out to us directly at historichotlapse@gmail.com. Send us your feedback, questions, comments, opinions, and additional subject matter you'd like us to cover. Thanks for tuning in.